Hello YouTube, this is Red Future, and this is my first video. Hate it, love it, whatever. I'm going to tell you about some misconceptions people keep having about communism. We all know them, but hey, it's my first video. Just tell me what you think. Whatever. One of the major misconceptions people end up having is that communism is some form of dictatorship. Communism, the proletariat, the working class, the people are supposed to be in charge. They have freed themselves from the oppression of the bourgeoisie or the capitalists and obtain basically their future. They're no longer enslaved to overlords that go around working them half to death to obtain a disproportionate amount of wealth for them for less than equal effort. If anything, they were supposed to be a form of democracy, not quite how we used to look at it. It's like a form of direct democracy. Of course, that is a vague way of describing it, and it's not specifically that, but it is, in a sense, a form of democracy. It's not supposed to be a dictatorship. Now, you can argue that historically it hasn't been, but you got to understand that, remember, those nations, they're not communists, they are socialists. Socialism is the transition period between capitalism and communism. It's where they're moving away from the capitalist mode of production into a more collective, for the people form of mode of production of society and how society has changed over time. It is a transition period. In that case, they are actually supposed to have been forming democracies. Now, depending on how you want to sift through Western propaganda and how you want to take your version of what was ended up true and what was not, regardless of the point is, they're at least supposed to have been democracies. But I mean, this is a very common misconception. People get this. People believe it without even thinking it. We have these people all over YouTube and elsewhere on the internet especially. We'll go around, they'll say that off and on. They're all right-wingers. But then you try to inquire about why they believe that. They were told it by somebody else. They have nothing to back it up. And then they go around and insult you when you argue with them. We all know how they are. But that misconception, it doesn't take even more than a few moments of research to have that one disproved. I guess that's why that one actually takes me off more than others. At least the others, you kind of see where maybe they've got the idea. This one, you just got to that is similar and partially related to the previous one, is that communism is some form of government. Communism is a socio-economic system. What this means is it is a way that society functions as a whole. It in itself is not a government. Now, some people say that there's going to be no government whatsoever. Yes, the state withers away. Whether or not that will be the form it takes in terms of, I don't want to say anarchy, but in terms of lack of any authority whatsoever, I don't think it'd be as clear-cut as that. But nonetheless, the state is supposed to wither away. It is supposed to, if it has any form of government, it's not going to be a government as we know it today. It will have similar features and functions, if at all, but it in itself is not a government. Even then, it is not a form of socialism in the sense that it's going to have a collective, where it's basically turning the economy into one giant company. That is a form of socialism that it not necessarily is going to end up being. Originally, with the way the Soviet Union had it, to where you had a collectivization of everything under one bureaucracy, the idea was that by doing so, you ensure that all the mode of production would be met specifically for the benefit of the whole in its entirety, without going to any one person or another. Of course, there were some flaws in this one with when it got so complex, it got really bogged down. You take your pick on how that worked, or if that was even the case. I personally believe it was. I don't really agree with the Soviet Union's version of how they collectivized labor, but nonetheless, for a good portion of its history, it worked quite well. But even then, that is not what communism will look like when they have achieved it. So, I mean, this is another misconception. This one is a little bit more understandable when people get the idea. Because it's really easy to confuse socialism with communism and having any form of government whatsoever. I can at least see this one as opposed to the previous one, which is just purely ignorant. But again, I mean, this one, you still don't have to go very far before you find your answer to this one. A little bit of research is all you need. And actually, I'll provide some links to some sites below that has some good explanation about how these things are supposed to, at least in general, work, or at least what communists themselves say about it. At least you can get someone else's opinion. I don't know. Most of my viewers probably already have, or at least soon-to-be viewers. This is my first video. Third misconception I want to cover. This one in particular angers me because I see it in the schools a lot. This is one I will find in almost every high school textbook, history textbook. In particular, mine it just had it in a little graph. It didn't explicitly state, like I've seen in other places. If we go down this graph and it compared communism to fascism, it almost seemed not related to the lecture in question of what the chapter was. It was just sort of put there, which really kind of bothered me. I'm from Indiana, a conservative state in the north, so I'm not that surprised. I mean, we're not that conservative compared to the South, but I mean, still, we got our weird shit here and there of the right wing, and it's annoying as hell. But nonetheless, we have this book where we'll have this graph, and it's very general. We'll have communism on this side, fascism on this side, and it's like democracy, no, another one, no. I forget the exact details. I wish I had a copy of the graph. I could just show it to you. If I ever find one, I'll put it up there. But it was this most vague stuff ever. It completely ignored any bit of ideology, any bit of Marxist theory. Even in the same book, and like anywhere else, it'll explain how fascism is very vague. It's more of a collection of ways of handling a situation that we would describe as fascism, as opposed to communism, which is a complete and utter theory. It's very specific about what it is and how you can compare the two. It's just absurd. And not to mention, fascism is a form of capitalism. It's capitalism in decay. In particular, in Nazi Germany, it was a form of corporatism. And if I remember correctly, Italy as well. And that is a form of capitalism. It is socialized capitalism, but it is not necessarily socialism in the sense that socialism is talked about in communism. That's where you go from a more old-style, vague form of the meaning of socialism, where having a military at all is a socialist function, or having a government is a socialist function, which then gets into a debate of how social should be. But nonetheless, corporatism is capitalism with a bit of a socialization to it. Fascism did a lot with that. Fascism was a dictatorship. The Führer and all that crap. I mean, there were explicitly certain things that they mentioned out, but then they tried to take misconceptions. One, communism being a dictatorship at all. Two, I mean, they try to say that their economies are state-owned. They didn't explicitly say state-owned. I don't remember the words specifically, but they were implying that they were both socialism as opposed to everything else. In a vague sense it was, but then they're using two different definitions of the term socialism to compare two different things with a misleading format. I mean, this idea that communism and fascism are somehow similar or the same is absurd. Again, just like the other two I've explained, you go into a level of detail at all into looking at these things, I mean, you realize there's a vast level of difference. I mean, leave it to the right wing to oversimplify everything to the point of pure stupidity. And they will spout this, they will throw it at us. It's absurd. But we all know that. Well, that's all I got. I just wanted a short video to start making a few. Tell me what you think. You know, where can I improve? I know the video quality probably could be a little better, as well as probably the audio. I'm still working on my editing skills. I want to turn this into something a little bit more presentable. But I said, I mean, I got to learn how to do it right. You know, I'm picking it up as I go. But, you know, critique me, tell me your opinion. What's some things you would want me to talk about in future videos? In particular, tell me in the comments section what in particular was your biggest misconception that you as a economist come across that people either ask of you or throw at you. What is to you the biggest misconception people hold against you? Well, subscribe if you want, thumbs me up, whatever, thumbs me down if you're right-wing and stupid, I don't care. Let me know what you think.